and welcome to the last recording of Outside the Box TV with Alex Ansary. This is edition 346 for April 5th, 2015. By the time you see this, unless you're watching online at youtube.com/AlexAnsary, which is also where you can follow my work from here on out, along with alexansary.tv, along with facebook.com/alex.ansary. And I'm going to be migrating to another state after one whole year of living the home-free lifestyle in Portland after my return in March of 2015. In this edition of OTBTV, I'm going to talk about my personal experiences in this town that I was born in, and some of the more significant moments in my lifetime that led to my political and spiritual awakening, that the world is not as it seems. Instead of covering a lot of news tonight, I'm actually going to be sharing with you some of my favorite songs that have a very strong association to Portland and very significant periods of my life. It is unfortunate that there is a vast majority of viewers on the local level that view my commentary on what Portland has become as some sort of hatred for the city itself. And everything that I have done, everything that I have ever said on this show or on my YouTube channel was always intended to provide information to make the world a better place. That was my only intention, and to help people get beyond and outside the box in the 10 years I've been doing this show, so we can help make the world a better place, understand the lies, understand the deceptions, and understand and tap into our own power. We don't have to be slaves, and certainly nobody has to be a slave to live in a dense population center. So I'm trying to lead by example. And there's power in alternative media, in ideas, in words, in the spoken word. The pen is truly mightier than the sword. And I've been walking that path for some time. And I'm far more of a philosopher than a revolutionary. And whatever it is I'm involved in the commentary on life in this matrix, it is timeless and it is beyond this lifetime. And frankly, for me to evolve, for me to progress, just like I left before in 2011, I need to hit the road again and have another experience. We are going to go over news. I think I should go ahead before I get too involved and go over some of the things that I have posted over at amtvmedia.com. I would recommend that you bookmark this site. I would recommend that you sign up to the RSS feeds, amtvmedia.com. And what we are seeing now in the world, in world events, in geopolitics, is confirmation of so many things that I have said before, that we would be heading towards this point in the post-2012 years, in the pre-2020 years, this build-up towards World War III, and it's a staged, managed war that will result in the destruction of this economy, of this military. And in so many different ways in past shows, I've talked about how Portland will be directly impacted. So let's go ahead and go through some of the stories now, going to my monitor. And then we're going to scroll through these briefly and go through several pages of news and provide brief commentary. Russia is boosting their air defenses to protect against what the United States is doing. The United States is increasingly aggressive. I'm not on one side or the other. We see these nations supposedly at odds with each other, but in reality, they are at peace in space. Something more is going on than what you're seeing. And let's readjust the sizing and positioning of the picture and text to remove the advertisements. The stock market in Iran has just seen a jump after this supposed nuke deal, which a lot of people think is going to give Iran the capability to develop some sort of a weapon. If in fact that is the case, it's because it's being designed that way. Several years ago, the former president of Iran was calling for a new world order. And now we're seeing a new world order being built up in the East. Everything the United States is doing is self-destructive. As we see more and more countries going to the AIIB, the death of the dollar is something that a lot of people see very soon on the horizon. Russia has called for an emergency United Nations security meeting following the activities that we've seen in Yemen And there's a lot of things taking place that some people believe is a sign or an omen that these times they are a change. And not too long ago we had the supermoon, we had the solar eclipse, we had the biggest geomagnetic storm of this solar cycle. And this last Saturday morning we have seen a blood moon. And I am about to hit the road again. And there are other times in the past where there were solar flares or other celestial events where I went through major changes in my life, like the Venus transit of 2004, June 5th in particular, which I'll talk about later on in the broadcast, what was going on in my life during that time period. But all of this is very interesting to see things taking place in the heavens and things taking place on the earth. Russia has upgraded their missile attack warning system, launching more satellites into space. More propaganda, as they say. More women are joining ISIS on the internet and accused of plotting terror attacks, all set up by the FBI to control the American people. This police state that's been established, TSA, hands down the pants, all that and more has not been done to stop terrorism, nor have they closed down the border. We have a wide open border, and this isn't just some political rhetoric. If the United States was really concerned about some of these things, we would have different measures in place. We wouldn't have small children harassed at the airports. We wouldn't see this type of conditioning process. But it is taking place, and it's only gotten worse. United States pushes missile defense system in South Korea. And we're just going to continue showing the articles here and images as we continue through this, as we rotate through this. Okay. Dollar sinks after U.S. jobs report released. So the dollar is going through this up and down phase at the moment. This is all temporary to provide people with a false sense of security in the United States stock market. Meanwhile, everything is being done deliberately with these nations. It's surprising people. They weren't expecting all the U.S. allies to join this new reserve bank coming out of China. They've told you for years they're going to have a new world order in the East. And there's a lot of people wondering whether it's going to be a new world order controlled by the West or the East. But you have both Eastern and Western powers working together to build this pyramid, surveilling their own people, sharing databases, sharing bases in space, covering up things like 9/11, covering up things like who's really behind ISIS, and in all of these superstate nations making a killing off of the occupation in the Middle East. This is the new world order that's emerging with robotics, with technology, with satellites, with artificial intelligence, as more and more human beings become less human every day as they become assimilated into this collective Borg. Russian ships stock at former NATO base. A lot of major stuff going on between NATO and Russia. A lot of Russian planes entering into European and American and Canadian, Western aerospace. And society's being conditioned to think that this is okay, that it's normal to constantly have these Cold War tactics going on. People practicing war games, people going and expanding their missile defense system, expanding their weapons, lasers from space, developing new ways of destroying things, new ways of poisoning people. This is where science is today. This is what's taking place. And robots set to replace half the human workforce, to make us more and more dependent on this machine. And it's all being done deliberately for this point down the line in the future. And all my commentary relating to Portland has been done out of concern, done out of love for what people's lives will be like in a dense population center like this when the money is no longer flowing in as it is right now. As things get more dangerous, going back to my monitor and leaving it there. And leaving it there. California drought to trigger mass migration. Okay? This is big. This is really, really big news. Now, a lot of people haven't heard about this. It's just been months since some people have heard about this, since NBC Nightly News for the last couple of weeks. This has been an ongoing issue for several years. And people are coming to Portland from all over. And a lot of people don't even know how many people from New York are coming here. And there are so many different factors, and the worst is yet to come. The real mass migration is yet to come, when it's being done out of necessity, when it's a genuine climate change refugee situation, regardless of your views on climate change. And there are natural forms of climate change, in addition to things like geoengineering and other forms of influence over the climate that is influenced by man. But there are things taking place in our solar system. There are more and more geomagnetic storms taking place, and there are holes in our Earth's magnetic field. There is solar wind streaming into this planet at this time, and we are set to seeing massive change on our planet. We're seeing a massive die-off taking place of the birds, of the bees, of fish. Okay, and so we're seeing this large human population dependent on California's food supply. They are the primary growers of food for the nation. 10% of it goes to almonds. But Nestle is still allowed, and the other corporations, to take massive amounts of water out of the aquifer. And it's going to cause a massive flight to the Portland area. And there's already people in both the have and have not categories struggling to find a home here. And what I've been trying to communicate for a long time that some people have misinterpreted as hate for Portland, this is not sustainable. And when you have a city collapse, over 61,000 bridges falling apart in America, there's news about the Selwood Bridge, and there's many other bridges. In the next major earthquake in Portland, a 9.0 or larger, they say we're well overdue, those bridges are going to come down. And you'll see major class warfare over who gets the water, which is gravity fed from Bull Run. What do we do when there's not enough water coming from Bull Run? What if there was an FBI staged terror attack in Portland, or some other event where the Bull Run water supply was affected, or if we had a major earthquake, or if we had a solar flare that could affect the grid? The infrastructure grid in Portland, the power grid, is vulnerable. We see that when there's winds and the trees go down, and for half a day or more, good chunks of the Portland area are out of power. But we see the traffic lights on, but we see residents, you know, like we saw this a couple weeks ago, without power. And they say that Mount Hood, this volcano that many people believe is extinct, is in fact not extinct. I remember hearing people say years ago, you know, there are no real extinct volcanoes on the planet. They're all active on some level. So when the right factors are in place, if you will, and we're dealing with cosmic influences, solar flares that directly are connected with the Earth's core, which affects ocean currents, affects the winds, affects so many other things, including our behaviors. Not just the Aurora Borealis and effect on the grid. So that's what I'm getting at with these major changes taking place, mass migration, resources, changes on the planet. Portland is anything but a stable place. And with Top Off 4 in 2007 taking place, basically, it was a mock takeover of the city where the military controls the entry points and exit points after they practiced this mock response to a mock dirty bomb release. This was all done in 2007 for Homeland Security to come in and practice locking down the city. But again, all being done with the guys who are protecting you from terrorism. In 2008, black helicopters swarm in the city. Now we're seeing massive people moving here and the Portlandia TV show. I believe that Portland is like a rebuilding of the Tower of Babel. And James, and I want to thank both Bill and James, by the way, for their support all these years, and especially this last year. And especially to Bill, multiple years he's been volunteering and crewing on the show. And of course, thank you to those very small select few that I have known that in person here in the Portland area that have been a friend at one point or another. Finding that part in the video that I showed you, the YouTube video, and then going to the man, the homeless man who's talking about Babylon. So I'll give you some time to find that. We'll go ahead and go to that now, and then I'll pick up my thought. Talking about the Tower of Babel?
The Tower of Babylon? Yeah, of course.
The B system, artificial intelligence, it's here.
It's here. Babylon. We were separated into tongues. We don't understand this. None of us. Some of us are able to conceive. Some of us are able to feel certain things that some of us can't. Prior to Armageddon, there will be the rebuilding of Babylon. You see things, don't you?
Well, not like I literally like, oh my God, but you know, I I feel, you know, I have a sense.
Yes, you do. And I love you for that.
Okay. What I want to do pretty shortly now is start talking about my personal experiences in Portland, starting with my birth. I don't know how I'm going to do this in less than an hour, but I'll do my best to give you a little bit more insight into who I am, who Alex Ansary is, where he came from, where he is now, and where I'm trying to go. But I want to kind of close this topic on the idea of Portland being the new Babylon. I have seen things that have shocked me in this last year. And this whole idea of the progressive Portland that people have basically been given is not the same Portland that has a #1 child sex trafficking problem, overpopulation problem, utility rate problem, street taxes. You have new forms of pollution. You have that Port Hanjin leaving, more transportation, more smog on I-5. The I-5 corridor has traditionally been a drug route. We're seeing more heroin coming into the streets, coming into Portland, Oregon. And more Portlanders, as I've talked about on the show, becoming homeless. And I've had to sit here and be called a hater. And I've watched the mainstream media and I've watched other reporters and journalists basically confirm everything that I've said about this city, including the racial demographics that are primarily one bloodline from the same part of Europe. I don't hate any of you. I don't hate any of you. I have felt personally threatened, though, looking at a society where large chunks of it only seem to trust people that look just like them, okay? That is what's bothered me. What has bothered me is seeing the misery in this city and this knowledge that, you know what, there's something about the city's Shanghai kidnapping, lustful, brothel, alcoholic, drug-addicted, kidnapping, molesting past, including conquering this land and murdering the Indians with disease, okay? So this civilization, this city of the wounded goddess, has been plagued by social ills because of what we've done to nature, because of what we've done to ourselves. So mankind rapes nature, all of a sudden you have molesters within society. We also see, instead of a city being really liberated sexually, a lot of sexual suppression. And I've talked about this in a very serious tone. If people really were drawn here to expand themselves and work on themselves spiritually, I don't believe that there would be so many women that would be chasing materialism as they actually are today, and being in the bad relationships with the wrong men, and having fear in the streets, and being closer to a dog than an actual male because of this manufactured gender war and other energies, environmental factors that are influencing that sense of apprehension and anxiety. I have witnessed it. Other men have witnessed it. And it's not just other men of darker skin, even white men. It's not just a racial issue. There's something in the air. So this is an ancient forest with powerful, primal energy running through it. It's on a special part of the planet. That's why I think that when we have these solar flares and other events, Portland's full of energy. It's jazzed up, but that's where that spirit of addiction comes in, oblivion, and other things that I would call a little bit less conscious, because Portland is truly a town of portals, which is way outside the box of what some people are willing to believe. Having lived here most of my life, okay, and felt some of the energies and seen how people in this town are very much influenced by those energies. And I would not say for the better. I have determined for such reasons and more, but most especially, living the home-free life, even out of a makeshift trailer, is a very difficult experience to go through in the Portland area. But if these things are really coming, some of these disasters that I feel in my heart, including if there's World War III and there's an occupation of the United States, which is more than likely that that's what the New World Order is really planning, okay? And I have warned that I think and believe, and all the indicators are there, that we're set for a massive human trafficking epidemic on the west coast of the United States. I'm on record since 2007 warning the women of this region and of this country in particular. Okay, this isn't about trying to stir up hate for other nation states or super states, because whatever's being planned is planned from a higher, darker place that most humans don't even want to investigate, the real dark occult controllers of this whole system. It's now 2015. There's enough evidence out there now to show there's an intelligent design behind the New World Order, but it's not of the light. And it's all about oppressing and controlling women, most of all to have control over their biology, who they procreate with, and down the line, there are things coming for the human species that most humans aren't ready for. So this chapter of my life is now coming to a close. It is now coming to a close. of returning to Portland to warn you and plant some seeds that major stuff's coming. And when they pull the trigger and when there's an occupation of this country, Portland will be more affected than other places in the country. And maybe there's a reason why they're telling people to come to Portland, to have their energies harvested, to have their energy sucked by the vampires of this region, both physical and non-physical. I've seen what this region has done to people. And in some cases, it has not resulted in a shift in consciousness towards the better. And since I've returned, I've seen people's hearts literally almost turned off. Through the bombardment of technology, through the stress, through living in the rat race, I've literally seen people in front of my very eyes act like they are no longer human and they're machines. They just happen to be living in an ancient forest. So this fallacy, which has become a religion, come to Portland, get enlightened, is a religion that I'm calling BS on. I'm calling BS on the concept of moving to a certain area and becoming enlightened. And in no way am I running from my problems by leaving Portland. But I know now that I'm at this age in my life, and I know that I've done this before. I've lived in areas in the country where there is not a heavy population, and what it's like to really be in touch with my own thoughts and feel the silence and be away from so much technology and so many women that are so scared and so many men that are so ignorant and so aggressive. There's a reason why people like me struggle in society, why we're different, but not just me, all souls throughout all human history that have thought differently, that have looked at the stars and questioned reality, that have questioned the matrix, questioned themselves, questioned the rules, questioned the structure, questioned the matrix. It's even in my genetics. Khwaja Abdullah Ansary, with an I, of Herat, Afghanistan in the 11th century, was doing a very similar thing, speaking out against, with a Sufi perspective, the mainstream view of Islam. And he lived in exile for it, in the desert, in Herat, Afghanistan. So I believe there's more than one reason why I'm returning to an off-the-grid environment in the high desert of south central Colorado. And it is there that I will expand upon my life story, my solar flare research, work on a few documentary films, working on outstretched.tv, posting news to amtvmedia.com, getting closer with nature, getting away from so many people. Everywhere I turn, there's another person. And when you're on the go, and when you have limited access to showers, and limited access to your private space, and none of your audience on Access TV even bothers to even email to show the slightest concern, in a way, if all these things are to happen to Portland, perhaps I should thank you. Okay? Because if things are going to turn out in a certain way, I've already made serious prayers in the past. I do not want to be in Portland during a blackout long term, because I know exactly what the people of Portland are going to do to each other. Now that a lot of you have pushed out the people of color and you literally have taken over this town, most of you, without showing any empathy for the Portland natives, without showing any compassion for certain homeless, by seeing what you will do to each other and turn away from the child sex trafficking problem, the denial, the hatred some of you have towards me for even bringing up some of these issues, that's educated me on the type of energy that you're attracting to yourself. This region has nothing but really dark, bad karma continuing to come to it. And every time I read another story about a little girl being abducted, I feel that slap against my face from you, most of you, that have never taken my warning seriously that there is a human abduction epidemic of women coming to Portland in the next decade when the you-know-what hits the fan, because we are so divided. Women already, for the most part, because of whatever's happened here, it's in the air. There's a sense of anxiety. If you're a woman and you're watching this, do you or do you not feel primal anxiety when walking by certain men? Now, I've already gotten the lecture as to that's just how it is in the urban cities. I'll tell you what, I've talked with older people. It wasn't always like this. Older people in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, they will testify that society had its problems, but it wasn't just like this. What's happening now, the distrust between the men and women, which is the root cause of all the problems in the world, including why we have a new world order. Okay? It is off the charts scary. So I don't want to live in a region any longer where I read reports about girls being abducted, because I've warned you, and now I know how a city will treat a man who's warned them. You will leave him in the street to die. So I will either let that experience destroy me, or I will grow up, wake up, and realize that I'm more of an asset somewhere else than here, and my life here has come to a close. And a new life needs to begin. And I'm really torn on whether or not to even submit shows to Portland anymore. And the feeling I'm getting right now is this is the last show on PCN. You can follow along at youtube.com/AlexAnsary. There's no Access TV show here. You will have to find me online, and if you don't use the internet, it's too bad. That's just too bad. Watching this show is not supposed to be like watching Fox News or CNN. I was never entertainment for you. Okay, this show was about our community. Community access. Oh boy, did I make it local in talking about these world issues. And Portland, where it's been, where it is now, where it's going, where we are on the map of the world, what's going on with the world now, with geopolitics, with missile defense systems, with the tax code, with the economy, with mass migration, with technology, with cell phones, with genetically modified food, and what's that's doing to human beings and their relationships, and even, you can even say, their sexuality. I have localized very large global stories that typically people don't do. And I've sat back and going, there really aren't a lot of people involved in the alternative media in this town at all. At all. It centers around mostly political parties, certain beliefs, and a cult-like belief that Portland and Portlanders are better than the rest of the nation. A unique form of narcissism, which deserves its own place in the dictionary. And it's that collective hive mind consciousness that some people think is more evolved than it used to be that I am stepping away from. As I've said before, there's nothing spiritual about thinking that your looks, your body, how much resources you're able to get from others based on being a hot chick or an influential dude, brains, brawn, and intelligence. People use them for wicked things. When they're successful, they confuse that with positivity and spirituality, when in reality, it's not very different than Satanism, because Satanism isn't about worshiping the devil. It's about worshiping yourself. It's about being self-serving. Seriously, there are ex-Satanists that say this is really what Satanism is about, and Satanism. That's why you see the pentagram all over this town. How much assistance am I to a town where the pentagram has taken over? Do as thou wilt. Nihilism. And it's only in Portland that I've come across other people that say, you know what, the only problem that we really have on our planet is too many people. I've traveled elsewhere and I've realized the whole world isn't like that. The whole world isn't nihilist, but the programming of Babylon is everywhere. I am not going to escape that off the grid. I've been interrogated about my race. I've been accused of being this, that, and the other from other people in the middle of nowhere. So now I realize you can't escape that programming, but you can get away from so many people. And because Portland is becoming a big city, but unlike New York, Portlanders stare. They don't say hello. They stare longer than they should, but they don't extend their hand in friendship and say, thank you, Alex Ansary, for at least being there and doing what you do. How do you do it? And people did that 7 years ago. People were almost like, dude, please don't worship me or do that, but please be a friend. I literally would say that and beg people on the air. Don't go, how do you do this without getting killed? Don't go, I don't know how you do this, and wrap up all those points. And wow, just wow, I don't know what to say. Now it's like everyone's become numb and bombarded with all this stuff. And there was a point in time where people appreciated an independent show because YouTube wasn't so expansive. It was novel. It was like, oh my God, I have never seen an independent voice outside the mainstream media talking about these issues. Now it's 2015, it's no longer 2007. And you've been bombarded with a lot of actually bad conspiracy knowledge too. And people like Clyde Lewis and others that use the airwaves to pollute the waters. And there are so many others that have done this. And I won't get into dropping a lot of names. But let me tell you what, I have come across some bad dudes out there that are not what you think they are. That are anything but. At the same time, I really care about you guys. I care about your children. I think about your children more than probably I should. How they're going to be living in the future Portland. How safe will little Jennifer be in 5 years? And I'm scared for you. And I'm concerned for them. And you know what? I literally have to cut this cord. You know, I'm going to make a documentary about what's going to happen in the larger geopolitical situation and why we could head to this point where things are less safe in the U.S. and some of the factors that show why they're planning for foreign occupation of this country once they kill the dollar and actually try to ignite a civil war within this country and bring in troops from other countries to restore order. And RT will be there saying everything's fine, they're here to help us. Meanwhile, more and more women will be disappearing and more men are going to be killed or herded into a camp of some form because the man is a protector. Sacred masculine protects the females, protects the tribe. And literally, there are men out there, they're going to have to grow a pair. And if they're in a situation where they're walking down the street in a future bombed out Portland, Oregon, and a girl is being forcefully gang raped in an alley, it is the responsibility of that man to start knocking out everybody that's in his path and not be afraid and be armed with a necessary weapon, not be another snot-nosed punk playing video games who doesn't know how to stand up for a woman. The reason they have manufactured this gender war is to turn the men to the dark side in response to the demonic evil that is being thrown at them from the women. The women, nice guys finish last, staying with the abuser, or only being with the man who's feminized, and not having respect for the sacred masculine protective force. There needs to be respect for the divine feminine. There needs to be respect for the divine masculine in our society. They are pillars that hold each other up. We have been so far thrown out of nature, and everyone with their cell phones and this obsession and being afraid and not having their intuition say, this is a safe person. This is my brother. He may look darker than me. He may be intense on Access TV. He may have a lot of passion. He may look scary, but we're brothers and sisters on a deeper spiritual level, and we've forgotten that. And that's where the toxicity, for me, as a hypersensitive individual with a certain amount of intuition that maybe you don't even think that I have, but I do have it, and I've seen so much come to pass already. That's a personal experience for me. It's a personal spiritual experience for me to have said, I have seen things come to pass in Portland, and now I'm freaked out how right I am. And I don't want to be here when this Tower of Babel comes burning down. And I don't think that I'm destined to be here. Going back to my monitor. Just to give you an idea, NASA's freaked out about cosmic death rays. It's not just solar flares that affect the Earth's magnetic field. It's the cosmic rays that some scientists believe are caused by supernova. And I've talked about the links between wars and solar flares. ISIS making moves. Major skirmishes on borders, China, Russia, the United States. Major shifts in the economy taking place. You will be affected by these changes. Russia to chair BRICS Business Council. United States and Israel test missile defense. Go ahead and delete your account page on Facebook. They're still tracking where you're going online. Foreign troops storm presidential palace in Yemen. Karma. The United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel, they just can't keep doing this forever. And it's intentionally being done to bring more evil to the people in those countries that are participating in the invasions. There are dark forces that most humans aren't even ready to start investigating or understanding that control all the super state nations. There is no lesser of evils, be it Putin, the leadership in China, Obama, or the next president, or the previous president. It is a coordinated, self-destructive plot to get man and woman warring with each other on the microcosmic level within the cities on an energy psychic attack level to the larger issues of man versus man in primal Call of Duty style World War III, using robots, using drones, kicking down doors, killing millions of people with a single button. All this and more. All this and more. They are working to build as they infect human psychology, as they infect human spirituality, and everything in this planet, on this planet, shows hallmarks of a backwards realm where up is down and down is up, just like Alice in Wonderland said. What it would be, what it would not be. What it would not be would be what it is, or something to that effect. A couple other things that I'm going to mention, then we're going to start playing a little bit of music. Google clashes with China over web security, what it's like to have sensitivity to Wi-Fi.
Soros may co-own Ukraine with $1 billion loan. Norway's air defense is on full alert in response to what Russia's doing, with them flying over countries like Switzerland with their transponders flipped off. Now, I've seen all this stuff build for over a decade now with the Russian jets and the drills in the Arctic and the Baltic states. It's building. And people are looking at Putin like he's some sort of a good guy. And even conspiracy researchers are drinking that Kool-Aid. It is all building by design. Chinese enter U.S. stock market at record rate. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that that is? New policy to seize suspected bank accounts. Are you accused of being a terrorist? Are you accused of being an insurgent? They can take your bank account. Radio waves from space have numerical pattern. There's a design behind this universe. We do not just explain, like, how does Darwin's theory explain the universe? Oh, the Big Bang. Yeah, everything just exploded and came from nothing. Well, what was the nothing? What came first, the chicken or the egg? And I will also say the reverse of the chicken and the egg philosophical question that's haunted man for a long time as we look at what's happening with drones, robots, transhumanism. What's going to come first, the complete takeover of the human species or the kill shot solar flare that in actuality will be the liberator from that way of life that we are being pushed into? Now, that answer I don't know. I only suspect that this king of all solar flares is a liberating force. And there are ways, though, the military is working to, they have things underground, they have things protected, electronics protected, they have technologies now where planes don't have to come down for fuel because they're solar powered. They aim to use the power of the sun and biology in a matrix sense or animatrix sense. For those that have actually seen the animated version of the movie The Matrix, we are the energy source even if there's other issues that come to affect our grid. It's human beings on some level, even on a spiritual level. I know this is so outside the box for some people to understand, but I can't sugarcoat this at all. But I do think that there is this dynamic, these dynamics taking place, and I'm just going to keep going through these. NASA plans to take people to Mars, but there's no proof that we've actually been on Mars. The question is, where are they really going to be taking people? So as you can see, as I wrap up this part, and you look at the headlines, yet China's getting more involved in rescuing. Here's PR. China's Navy evacuates Chinese citizens from Yemen as the Navy gets more practice. And I knew, and I felt on an intuition level, in this decade we would see China get more involved in rescue missions as they play the good cop in this good cop, bad cop scenario. As the U.S. on cue plays this aggressive bull in the China shot, you know, going like this with a sword. Well, you can only go like this with a sword so much when you got other dudes with machine guns. Now, if you're going to run around with a sword and you're basically arming the whole world with machine guns, then you're doing this deliberately to get the people behind you shot and raped. Do you understand? Should I say that again? Raped and shot. And maybe slowly over time with a lot of cutting in between. I'll tell you what, when you research and understand what U.S. troops have actually done to Middle Eastern women in front of their children, in front of their husbands, and you absorb and you literally have a spiritual awakening. How many women, how many men in the society, in particular in this city, that have said nothing and have actually treated people, bringing these issues to light with cruelty and leaving them on the streets for dead? It has completed for me what I've needed to understand about society and the shift in consciousness, which is not towards the light, it's towards the dark side. 2012 was real. After 2012, something's going on with human consciousness that is not of the light. And we've seen an increase in sociopathic, cold-hearted, robotic-like behavior since 2012. 2012 is and was real. What is happening with human society since then? Where is the love? Where are the communities? Where is the free love? Where are the get-togethers? After 2012 and a few years before that, so much changed. So 2012 was a mark point in human society. It was the end of a cycle. What kind of a cycle are we going into in the next couple hundred, the next couple thousand years? Back to the question, what's going to come first? The solar flare or the robotic takeover? Does it really matter in the scope of your lifetime and my lifetime? Because ultimately our lifetimes come and go like that. What's most important is asking the question, what are we even doing on a planet where this stuff's going down? How do we get out of here, and where are we? What is here? What is here? Is this just some planet barreling through space? What are we doing here, and what do we do to get here, and what do we have to do to get out, either out of this incarnation time wheel, regardless of your awareness levels at the moment, with the possibility of this being the predicament that we're in, or anything else. But to be an earthling in the future, and I would even say to be a woman born in today's society, is not a sign of high points of karma, because of the day and age that we live in. Everybody needs to really think hard about what they need to do in their own personal life to avoid being a victim if you are involved now in heartless behavior, because you cannot escape your actions. No one can escape natural law. None of us. And it is only because of my confidence in myself on a spiritual level, even if I may lack confidence in some of my aspects of life on the physical level, it's only because I know that I've done good, that I'm not afraid of the afterlife or someone taking my life in this world. There's only because I know I've done good. I believe in the inherent forces of right versus wrong. Violating someone's free will versus reminding someone that they had free will and that we should use our bodies, we should use our free will, we should use our energies for good and only good. We should not be master manipulators. We should not be cold, heartless individuals that only care about ourselves, because nothing can come from it. History is our guide. History is our rule book. And we have seen nations that have invaded other nations. We've seen their men killed, and we've seen their women raped. Meanwhile, they sexualize your youth. And they divide man and woman, and you don't yet see what's happening. You don't yet feel that hair on the back of your neck rising. You don't have that light expanding right now in your third eye that something's building for something, and Portland is going to play a really huge role down the line. When the cartels move here in larger numbers, as the dollar collapses, as we have a food crisis with the issue in California, as the military gets more involved in drones and black helicopters over the city, as the city of Portland becomes more corrupt and sells out to private interests, banking institutions, real estate developers, and potentially a point in time where the housing bubble, are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? Can you even believe it can happen? Nobody believed it would happen in 2004. They would go through a housing bubble popping, but it did all across America. You think Portland will always be popular? What if there was a major issue with resources and there was no water, or there was, how popular would Portland be in a situation where it was isolated from the rest of the nation and the people of Portland did not have access to the food and water that they had been used to getting through this entire time, whether it be from a natural event or some other event or a combination of many things happening at once. So we're going to go ahead and no longer cover these headlines. We're 44 minutes into the program. Portland is a city where I have a lot of history. Changing the topic here. A city that I was born in 1980. And what I want to do is play some music. And this is my grandfather's hat. I talked about my grandfather, Bill Nagel, and what a positive, we're going to get track number 2 ready. What a positive influence he was on my life. And this video, this song, played during his funeral. And Bill Nagel, go ahead and hit it, passed away within 24 hours of my first recording of OTBTV.
You were always on my mind. You were always on my mind. And maybe
Okay, so my grandfather passed away on November 28th, 2004. Now, I was born in 1980, and I'm going to give you a very large story broken down into sound bites. I was born in 1980 to a father from Afghanistan and a white mother in Oregon, and my parents divorced. This is all going to be in my book. My parents divorced when I was born, and I grew up basically being psychologically tortured by each parent in their own way. Grew up in a single-family household. My grandfather was like the stable, sacred, masculine, protective force in my life, who built his home in the 60s. So there was a home for my mother and me to live in, rent-free during those not-so-great days of the 1980s. As far as the economy was concerned, there was that recession, late 70s, so on and so forth. My mom was going on the spiritual path, mainstream New Age dogma, which I rejected because it had very hardcore dogmatic and religious overtones that I would not identify to be spiritual. So I grew up basically with a tortured childhood, traumatized by my mother through a lot of verbal abuse and screaming. And that's where my life started from, is the experience of moving from place to place to place, especially once the farm was sold in 1993. The experience of being bounced back and forth between parents as a teenager. While I was a teenager, my main thing was martial arts training. I stayed away from drugs and alcohol. As soon as I was able to read, I was reading books about like the idea of living in a matrix, Buddhist concepts, how do we evolve beyond the suffering of this world, and trying to apply that to my own situation with having two parents, literally in their own ways, having their own way with me, trying to break me, of which they almost did. I was living with my father and his relatives in the DC area in the 1996 period, because I wanted to get away from my mother, who took me to Queens, New York with her. I don't want to live with her and her jerk of a boyfriend in a Flushing, Queens, New York apartment. So I accepted my dad's offer, and my dad always was trying to play that, oh, please let me have my son. Oh, because my mom was definitely playing a control issue with the child support and the visitations and everything being down to and that's the trap a lot of women get into in this society. They get kind of crazy with it because they get a lot of power from the system, and they use that to get back at that which they think hurt them or may have hurt them. And my dad beat my mother when I believe I was in the womb, and that played a big part in the separation. So in those late 90s, I'm living with my dad in Washington, D.C., and I'm feeling the great evil of Washington, D.C., and it literally freaked me out. And I'll tell you what, you heard that song, Sarah, at the beginning? I would cry. I would cry and listen to music that reminded me of Portland, because all I wanted to do was come back to Portland. I was having literally like delusionary thinking of riding my bike throughout Southeast and becoming enlightened. And, you know, I think there's something about this town that's beautiful, but there's also something hypnotic about the idea of just moving somewhere and having your life, you know, improved. If you're not doing the inner work, your external world won't change, only some things. And we did move back, me and my dad. And I'll tell you what, living with Afghans was tough because they outright rejected me for not being a Muslim. So don't think when I talk about what's happened to Afghanistan, don't think that when I talk about this, you know, marginalization of Muslims, that I'm a Muslim, or that I even have connections with those people, or that they give a damn about me, because they don't. I am the only Ansary of the earth. Of millions of Ansaries. I am the only one that has gone on record questioning 9/11, that's tried to bring light to what's really going on in Afghanistan. And I'm of mixed race. I'm not even a full blood. I'm not even a full blood. What is that all about? And what has that been all about? These are questions that keep me up late in the dark of night, so to speak. And I've always wanted to know that answer. Why was I born into two very different bloodlines that are not normally attracted to each other? It was really clear to see how long they stayed together. Were they brought together just to bring me out through the womb? Questions arise. Questions to ask. Curious thing, really. When you have so much racism towards people of mixed race, and you see some people of mixed race, and I've met many people with Indian blood and Anglo-Saxon blood that have a sense of intuition, knowing, questioning the stars, can't help but feel that this fusion of multiple bloodlines has played a partial role in my big picture thinking. But long story short, we did move back to Portland in '98 after living with some of his relatives in the DC area. And I'm not going to get into the public school system, but I was enrolled in over 6 high schools in a single calendar year, just simply from my parents trying to bounce me back and forth, which could have destroyed me and turned me into a runaway early on. And had I been a female turned into a runaway, how many runaways end up in the sex trafficking industry just because they're females and cute at that age? What happened was I moved out after after rejecting my father's attempt to abuse me and showing my father that I'm 2-3 times as strong as him. And I think that freaked him out. I think that freaked him out when he tried to put his arms around my neck, and I went, booyah! Yeah, you fell on your, you know what? You ain't got no power, punk. You think you've got fire? I am Alex Ansary. You don't got nothing on me. So he was freaked out that he wasn't able to control me and slam me down like his father did him in Kabul, Afghanistan. See this angry Alex Ansary, ooh, angry. He's rejected Islam. He's rejected abuse. He's rejected authority. He gets bad grades. He's the devil. And I was the devil in that man's mind. You're no son of mine. I brought you in this world. I could take you out. Okay. So I've divorced my father for a few years, and I and my mother to this day don't talk a whole lot, for reasons I won't get into. But I'll tell you what, after I moved out, for several years I struggled with a heroin addiction in Portland, which I got myself off of in the year 2004. In and out of jail, just for violating parole, stayed away from robbing people, hurting other people, but got caught up in the system for being a user. And during that Venus transit of 2004, I came aligned with my mission and why I was born, and why I even went through the abuse as a child, and why I was even drawn to destroy myself, and why so many times there was an angel or something else that guided me out of trouble, even in those last days of using. And it wasn't just like one big, oh, Alex the junkie. You know, it was like, oh, self-destructive, don't know why I'm feeling these feelings. And the circumstances were there in Portland at that time to easily be an addict. But in the post years of 9/11, and then learning about 9/11, and learning about the government bringing drugs in this country, and learn about the journey of the soul, how there's more to the human experience than that which we're thinking, and so many other things. Through that experience, I had a major shift forward that people today still don't understand about the abuse experience and journey. Come the Venus transit of 2004, June 4th, 2004, going through the experience of getting clean, and then all of a sudden having this moment of clarity, like I'm supposed to start a show. I'm supposed to put content out there. And I started with 9/11. And I worked the whole time. And it's like all the energies were supportive of me going on that path. Because once I began to walk down that path of truth and sharing truth, and of course I was not getting way deep into AA and NA because I saw the sickness of those groups and came to terms myself with what I was struggling with. And now I understand why others are struggling. And there are so many people struggling and hurting with so many addictions to many things, even way beyond drugs. Some people are addicted to being super strong and on steroids. Some people are addicted to being in control, being a middle manager. Some people are addicted to sex. Some people are addicted to shopping. Some people are addicted to this. That addictive nature comes from people trying to fill that void because they're not on the path that they're meant to be on. And I'll tell you what, it takes real compassion for the future of this country to know that there are forces within this country and other countries that were involved in covering up 9/11 that has resulted in the deaths of millions of people, and then to come back and warn you that, hey, this is bigger than just killing Afghanis and Iraqis and creating misery in the Middle East. They're doing this, folks, with the front of America as they get ready for this massive world war. You don't think that America is going to be affected? So out of love and compassion, I have told you my story. And I've given you information and I've warned you, regardless of what you might think about me, that all this is going to come back and haunt the people of the United States. All the apathy from the last decade, while people have been watching Dancing with the Stars, eating ice cream, and jerking off the football. You know, while you could have been involved in exposing what's going on in this country. What goes around comes around, and a lot of people were co-opted and invited to join Satan's army or the dark side. And a lot of people are bought and sold, including the wives of some of these dominators, these girlfriends of some of these troops. You have bought into it. That means you're involved in it and you support it on an energy construct level. And so I am here to remind you, and have reminded you this entire time, that danger is coming to your nation and danger is coming to the city. And I'm a super sensitive individual. That's why during that time of 9/11, I felt like hurting myself, and I did. And then after 9/11 happened and learning about what was happening in Afghanistan, now I know why I was intuitively picking up on trauma and trying to find a way to deal with it. And out of love for you, and out of a desire to evolve my own soul instead of hate you, and wish America falls and that the people of America suffer. I want to see you do well, and I'm giving you what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, and what I've researched. They are now coming for you next. The plan for America is the same and very similar to what they've done to Africa and other nations in the Middle East down the line. In this last minute, we did not get to share the other songs with you. But we will go ahead and close out tonight on cue with that particular track that I gave you.
Got it.
You can follow my work at alexansary.tv, youtube.com/alexansary, facebook.com/alex.ansary. You are responsible for your own shift in consciousness. You are responsible for your own freedom. You are responsible for the very things in life that will get you to the next day. The world is changing, Neo. And it is time for your spirituality, your intellect, and your body to evolve with these rapidly changing times. Otherwise, you are going to be swept away with the ocean. I am here to remind you that you have free will. And instead of looking at all these external things outside of yourself, and instead of falling in the box of the blame game, of division, of the illusion of separation, it's important that you understand the path to the ultimate truth and place of power, raw human power, still lies within. We'll see you at youtube.com/alexansary. Portland, Oregon, USA, city of my birth. Good luck.